Bengals and the Cleveland Browns. Former Cincinnati Bengal Ken Anderson hanging out with us here today. Mr. Anderson, welcome, sir. How are you?
I am doing great, thank you. Looking forward to the game tonight.
I'm excited about this. I know we have had you on shows past, and we've talked about how cool it is to see the Browns and you don't really care about the Browns. You care about the Bengals. But for me, to see the Browns and the Bengals both getting to the point where we're playing meaningful games, we're playing for something, towards something, as opposed to always just hanging out in the basement. Now, I say that knowing my team's kind of hanging out in the basement, talking about the Browns, of course. But it feels like the Browns and Bengals, they're on Monday Night Football. This is not your typical Monday Night Football showdown. It shows just how far these two franchises have come. And unfortunately, for me, not for you, your team has kind of surpassed mine and is kind of living up to those expectations.
Well, we'll see. That's when you play games like this, and I've been in a bunch of them, you kind of throw the records out, and you got to go up there and you got to play well. And, I think one stat that's interesting is Joe Burrow has never beat the Browns. He's 0-3. So maybe they got his number a little bit. I don't know.
With that being said, you guys want to talk, of course, about everything kind of happening, kind of leading up to this matchup. The Bengals, after that 0-2 start, they've obviously flipped that switch, whether it was the offensive line adjusting to that. Joe Burrow, of course, after the appendectomy coming into the season, for whatever reason, the offense wasn't clicking. But the last 2 weeks, the plus side is the offense has really clicked over the last 2 weeks. The downside is they finally found a way to kind of get it going a little bit, but now you throw the big wrench in there. Of course, Jamar Chase, not just out a game or 2 games, but out at least potentially a month, maybe more. When you heard that news last weekend, again, just finally feeling like this team was finally heading in the right direction, not saying the season's over by any means, but this definitely throws a wrench in the chemistry that they had finally been able to get it going here 6 or 7 weeks into the season.
Yeah, and that was one of the things why the Bengals were so successful last year is that they were as healthy as any team in the league for the majority of the season. And now you get, Jamar out. I think the one saving factor is, their tight end is playing well. You've got Tyler Boyd, you got T. Higgins, you've got Joe Mixon. I think they've got some other backup receivers that are going to fill in very well. So, and Cleveland's a little bit banged up for this game. So I think the Bengals offense is going to continue. And I think, it was kind of maybe the turning point was a couple of weeks ago when they decided to go to almost exclusively the shotgun. And, they're there and Joe is getting the ball out quickly, which has really helped the offensive line out.
You talked about Joe Burrow being 0-3 as a starter versus the Cleveland Browns. Another stat that came across the timeline today is that the Bengals are 0-12 in their last primetime road games. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, regular season road games, I think that they did pretty well in the playoffs last year.
Definitely.
They may not have been prime time, but they were the only games going on. It's a different Bengals team now, and after last season, they're getting prime time games and multiple ones, they're getting Thursdays, they're getting Sunday nights, they're getting Monday nights. And I think they got 5 of them so far this year that are scheduled, and who knows what they'll do and flexing one of the later games as well. So you never know there. But like I said, I think having Joe Burrow coming along and healthy this year and what they're doing offensively and the defense still hasn't given up a touchdown in the second half. I think they'll acquit themselves very well today.
You got to think that Joe Mixon and that offensive line are chomping at the bit since the Cleveland Browns run defense is bottom of the league.
Well, let's hope so. And again, you can look at statistics and my gosh, in these division games, like I say, you throw them out. I remember, 1979, we were an awful football team and we were 0-7 and the Steelers were 7-0. And they came to Cincinnati on the way to another Super Bowl, and we beat them 37-10. They didn't cross midfield till the fourth quarter. So you look at statistics, and then you kind of throw them out. And I always remember Paul Brown. Whenever we returned to Cleveland, it was a big game, and those sentiments are still there.
Ken, just with your experience, obviously playing, the quarterback position at the highest level, being a former MVP quarterback, you do that. You accomplish those things, of course, because you have talent around you. And obviously, this offense for the Bengals is more than just Jamar Chase, but obviously, he is the guy that just really kind of allows everything to open up the way that it does. This offense is not dead in the water without Jamar Chase by any means, but I know everyone keeps saying, well, they're fine. They're fine. They got T. Higgins. They got Tyler Boyd. I get that they are fine and that they're fortunate to have a lot of other weapons to be able to kind of fill the void while he is out. But at the same time, we can't talk about how elite this offense is with Jamar Chase and expect it not to have any kind of hindrance on the offensive flow. From your experience, when you take a talent like Jamar Chase out, I know it's easy to say they'll be fine because they have T and they have obviously Boyd and others, but how much of an impact negatively does this have on an offense? What's a realistic setback for this offense as far as what impact it could have, not just on the offense as a whole, but Joe Burrow?
Well, I think they're going to be successful tonight, and like I say, you've got, other receivers, on the roster and who had good, good training camps and good preseason. So, it's like I said, they still got to worry about Boyd. They still got to worry about T. Higgins. And so that means all of a sudden, Hayden Hurst is doing a nice job at tight end. He's going to have a big game, and we'll see who the third receiver is going to be.
The Cincinnati Bengals defense has definitely been playing like they did in the playoffs. Now they're going up against that running attack from Nick Chubb and the offensive line. What can we expect from the linebackers and that defense from the Cincinnati Bengals going up against that running attack?
Well, was it last week with Atlanta and even the week before New Orleans, teams had success in the first half running the football against them. Then they kind of tightened down, batting the hatches, they held them to field goals rather than touchdowns. So, with Reader out, in the middle, that's one of the big guys. Again, they're going to have to, step up the pace. And, it's kind of the theory, next man up. We're going to have to go ahead and pick up the pace.
Last thing before we let you go, Ken Anderson, former Bengals MVP quarterback with us here. I know Joe Burrow has just been that big infusion as to the biggest difference maker coming into Cincinnati. Obviously there's been so many other great moves around him. It hasn't just been him, of course, but everything seems to be clicking for this team. A minor setback with the Jamar Chase injury, of course, but with what time you have spent with this team and when you've been around Joe Burrow, what is your biggest takeaway as far as what separates this positive run for the Bengals and previous positive runs for the Bengals in decades past, even going back to when you were there?
Well, I've only had a chance to meet Joe once, and that was in one of the OTAs that I happened to be, in town and saw him after practice for a little bit because, before then with the COVID restrictions in the NFL, like I couldn't get near, the locker room or anything. So, but I think, it's his leadership by example. He works extremely hard at it. He's extremely well prepared. And I think it goes back, Zach Taylor was getting a lot of grief the last several years. He kept talking about culture. We're heading in the right direction. We're trying to get the right guys in the locker room. And we saw what having, the right guys in the locker room can mean. And, all the successful teams that I've been on, it's been a good locker room where the players are all pulling in the same direction. The veterans are great leaders, and you don't always have to be a vocal leader. You lead by example. And these Bengals have a lot of hardworking guys, a lot of guys that lead by example. And, it's where the running game wasn't going well. And Joe Mixon calls the meeting with the offensive line. Hey, let's look at it together. What are you thinking? What am I thinking? Where am I going wrong? What can we do better? And so everybody is positive in their approach but working extremely hard together.
All right, Ken Anderson. Ken, listen, my takes are not, very well received around here. A lot of Bengals fans. I'm a Browns fan. I'm outnumbered around here. My two hot takes for tonight: the Browns put an end to the Bengals no touchdowns in the second half streak. I think the Browns scored 2 touchdowns in the second half. I think the Browns win tonight. And I'm really curious to see what your boy Joe Burrow what he wears in the pregame. I get ripped all the time because I poke fun at what he wears in the pregame on Twitter. You love what he wears in the pregame.
Oh, yeah, walking into the stadium last week, it was purple, and what game was it? He had the black suit with the white print flowers on it. He makes fashion statements. It'd be interesting to see if they walk into the stadium in Halloween costumes tonight.
Which of Joe Burrow's pregame outfits could you pull off?
None.
None.
I did not wear clothes nearly as well as he does.
Well, as always,
but I will say one thing. I'd be happy to come on your show again, but only when you may not be there. Especially the next Brown game. Give me a call. But I'm not really excited to talk to a Browns fan like that.
No, that's fair. But I did text you on the Super Bowl. I gave you a who day on the Super Bowl last year. I said it pains me as a Browns fan. I did give you a who day.
Yes, you did, and now you're flaunting it with your pick today.
Well, I tell you what,
call me tomorrow after we beat you by 30, and we'll see how it goes.
That's fair. I'll give you another who day tomorrow if that's the case. And then if the Browns win, you still agree to come on moving forward, correct?
Yes, I will.
All right. That's a fair bet. All right. Former Bengals great Ken Anderson. Ken, you the man. I appreciate you. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Later.
All right. Ken Anderson.